Welcome to the definitive UFO news show where we dig into the biggest UFO headlines, the fight for disclosure, and the push for transparency. This isn't just a news show, it's a real discussion. We break down the stories, examine the possibilities, and explore the unanswered questions for the search for the truth. No political spin, no biased narrative, just the facts, the analysis, and yes, the conversations that move the needle. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. It's time to dig into the show. We're going to go ahead and have a little bit of fun here this evening. We're going to talk about Artemis 2. It slipped my mind, right? We've talked about Artemis 2 maybe last couple of years, and it kind of went off the map for a while. We didn't know if they were still doing it or what the status was. All of a sudden, recently, pops back up in the news, and they're like, hey, we're going in like 2 weeks. So I'm like, okay, it'd be a good time to kind of talk about that, because if you think about it, some people think we went to the moon, some people think we didn't, right? So it's either we're getting ready to go to the moon for the first time, or we're getting ready to go back to the moon after 50 plus years. So, but either way, I think it's a pretty exciting thing, and definitely something I think it'd be fun to kind of just cover, because it's not necessarily if we went or if we didn't. We've done a show about that. This is more so of what will they find on the dark side of the moon, because even though they're not actually landing on the moon on this trip, they will be taking a trip around the moon, right? Which means they have to be exposed to the dark side of the moon. Now, for a lot of people, the exciting piece about this is there's been so many rumors about bases on the dark side of the moon, buildings, structures, all these different things, right? These things get to be either confirmed or denied on this trip to the moon. Now, that's if we're able to have any sort of transparency, right? This channel here is about truth and transparency, and yeah, I don't know. It's connected to NASA, and so you'd have to ask the question. Are you going to have an astronaut? You know, modern day, we haven't had an astronaut do anything this profound in many years, if you believe the stories. So is this situation, are we any different? Have we moved anywhere in this space as far as being able to get transparency if they do see something while they're on the way to the moon? It's like I said, the Apollo 11 mission, or really all the Apollo missions, they use pretty much the same lunar lander, right? And as I was saying before, I recently watched the show with one of the original Apollo astronauts, and he was talking about how big I'll say how small, it really wasn't big. He said essentially the size of the lander, right? He stated they had 3 astronauts shoulder to shoulder inside this lander, and he said the astronaut on the right could reach out and touch the wall, and the astronaut on the left could do the same. So that's not really that big if you think about it. 8 to 10 feet, maybe, going wide. And thinking about that being in the vastness of space, where it's infinite, and we're talking about multi-day trip, right? It's almost the same as, think about going out into the ocean, right? While you're still near the shore, you're in the, and I'll use my something for example that I had when I was younger, when I was a little kid. We had done a fishing trip with a news station out in the Bay Area. We left out of San Francisco, and it was a salmon trip, salmon fishing. So we're leaving out early in the morning. We're docked, and it's a pretty decent sized boat. At least to a child, it seemed pretty decent size. We get in this boat, and we leave. We go under the Golden Gate Bridge out into the open Pacific Ocean, and we go far enough to where you can no longer see land. Now, once you get to that point and you see the vastness of this ocean around you in every direction, then your boat feels pretty small at that point, right? And I would assume that's the same effect or feeling that you're going to get being inside of, even the Artemis, right? Because still, I don't care how big it is, the vastness of space, I think, still dwarfs it, right? And especially if you're looking back at your home planet, which is obviously going to be huge as well, it has to dwarf, make you feel pretty small. And I'm just wondering, a trip like that, what that would do to a person. I'm sure they prepared for this. But then with all that time being, physically disconnected from what you know is your home, you know, if you happen to see things, what do you do in that situation? I'm sure they've been briefed on this. And we're going to talk about that and a lot more. But before we jump into all that, let me go ahead and say hi to everybody that came in, because I appreciate you guys showing on up and also giving me audio check, because like I said, once again, this system is a wild system that I'm using here, and it's just not very comfortable, but we're making do. Flat Sixer, thanks for coming on in. Kurt M, appreciate you showing on up. Miss Catherine Jones, thanks for coming on in as well, letting me know what we're doing here. And we are actually good. Let's see, Kurt M. And we have a few lurkers out there that haven't gotten in the chat yet. Don't worry about it, guys. You can hang out. We got a little late start due to a couple issues, but we are back on track. Here, let me go ahead and bring up our slides for the show here tonight. As we get into this Artemis 2 chatter, this Artemis 2 talk, the phone number to the social dig right here is always, and like I say, you can lock this in your phone. It's a cool thing to do. It's 856-843-3444, or that's 856-THE-DIGG. If you're outside the United States, dial 001 first. Then 856-843-3444, or the 001-856-THE-DIGG. And also, before I forget, let me go ahead and take a moment to wish happy birthday to my son and my brother today. Happy birthday, fellas. They happen to have the same birthday, February 11th. So happy birthday to those guys. Let me go ahead and get back into the show here. Memberships are available to become a social soldier today. You can do that by clicking the link in the description of each and every video that we put up here on the channel. And we will make sure to continue to raise the bar for you. If I could ever get away from this program, that would be lovely. So, so memberships and all that definitely help me be able to do things like that and elevate the game here. So appreciate you guys. As we go ahead and get into the road to 1,000 subscribers. Still on that road, right? So we're taking one by one, subscriber by subscriber. Slow growth, organic growth is the best growth, especially when we get together and have like-minded conversations with like-minded individuals. We always have conversations that move the needle. So make sure to tell a friend, bring a friend next time you come to the show. That would be awesome. And if you're here for the first time, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, the notification bell, so you know next time we go live and have one of these awesome conversations here. What else do we have here? We have UFO Con. Yes, we are definitely doing UFO Con. I'm actually a part of this here, coming up on March 20th, 21st, 22nd. UFO Con 2026, contact on the Bay. You can go ahead and get tickets if you want to go. If you're in the area, that's caufocon.com. As we go ahead and take a look at some of the speakers. This will be at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Burlingame, California, which essentially is South San Francisco. We'd love to see you out there. We're going to have Carl Crusher, Jesse Beltran, Solaris Blue Raven, Paul Hynek, Misha Johnson, Rima LeBeau, Terry Lovelace, Courtney Marker, Sonny, Kathy Porter, Ron Reger, Robert Bob Salas, Michael Schratt, Jeff Silver, Blake Sinclair, Blue Sophia, Daystar. We will also have Ryan Wood. We'll have me, Mr. Rob G. I'll be conducting interviews of all the guests there that you saw on this list. Robert Perella will be the MC along with Dave Scott, Spaced Out Radio. Should be an awesome event. Make sure you guys come on out, get your ticket, caufocon.com. It'll be awesome to meet you there and see you there. So we go ahead and get ready to get into this conversation here. I wanted to start it off with this. Because once again, Artemis 2 is, something to be excited about, right? I know when this promotional came out, the one you're seeing on the screen, the astronauts, they look ready to go. I think they did this like a couple years back, and it was like, wow, okay, we're going back to the moon. Wow, awesome. Or we're going to the moon for the first time. Either way, it's going to be a huge, huge moment in humanity's history. Because once again, you have to think about another celestial body, right? It's not a planet, but it's the moon. It's another celestial body that a human being in modern time is we're going to have the opportunity to at some point step foot on it, right? In the meantime, just we're going to take a trip around it. I don't know how many orbits they're going to do before they come back, but this will, I think, solve some of the questions here that we have about what's on the backside of the moon, right? Because we know it's tidal locked or landlocked. I think that's what they call it, tidal lock, where the face, one side of the moon always shows towards the Earth. We never see the backside of it. Therefore, with these things that we see in the sky, these craft and these beings that are here that we assume are coming in and out the oceans, there are some theories that say that maybe they have some sort of base on the backside of the moon, which, truthfully would make sense if you think about it. If we just use Mars, for instance, if Mars was already inhabited by some sort of living species, right? And we leave Earth on a mission to go there. We want to go check out Mars. Instead of just going into the planet and not knowing what the interaction would be like with the living things on the surface, a good place to kind of have an outpost would be on the moon, right? Because you can keep an eye, you can visually see what's going on down there. You're not necessarily, fully engaged with life down on the surface. And it would make sense, right? So even if they weren't using that for an outpost now, it could be something that they historically have used for an outpost. So something they used to use but no longer use. You may find remnants of who knows what on the backside. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any transparency on something like that. But these are the astronauts. So going from left to right here, we have Jeremy Henson with the Canadian Space Agencies on the far left. The gentleman next to him is Reed Wiseman. I believe he's the captain, I want to say. Next to Reed, we have Victor Glover and then Christina Koch. So these are the four that are going to be going, right? They're gearing up. They were supposed to launch this month. That's why we set up a show. I thought, okay, if they're going to launch here within another week or so, let's do a show. Let's talk about it and then talk about it again once they get back. But there seems to have been some sort of delay, something to do with the fuel, where they had to push this out until next month. So as far as I know right now, NASA is gearing up to launch Artemis 2, the first crewed mission to the moon in half a century. There are 5 potential Artemis 2 launch dates next month, March 6th through 9th, March and April. So you got April 1st or April 3rd through 6th or April 30th. And the liftoff lasts about 120 minutes on all those dates, except for March 11th when it's 115 minutes long. So they have certain windows where they can or can't launch, right? So they only have 11 opportunities over the next 61 days. And then some of those could obviously be affected by weather and other things. So should be interesting. Hopefully we can get them up there, because I would love to, see how that all turns out and see if we can get some, when you debrief or when they have a press conference and talk to the public, see if there's anything that they can add to, what we know or what we're thinking or what we've, thought about the moon, right? It's been last 50 years, at least, there's been just a debate back and forth. Did we go? Did we not go? If we did go, what did they see? Were we scared to go back? What's going on there? And so I think here's one thing just we'll start with, right? If this has always been my thing. A lot of people talk about Apollo 11. We're going to go over just some of the times that they've seen something out there, right? But some people think with Apollo 11 that they went to the moon, but they saw something there. They told them not to come back, right? But my whole thing was, well, okay, if that's the case, then why would we go another 6 times, right? Or 5 times after that? Think, yeah, 6 times. So we went to Apollo 17, I think. The 13 didn't make it, right? So we went another 5 times. So you have to ask yourself, if that was the message on Apollo 11, supposedly, why would we even risk going back 5 other times? It just, for me, doesn't make sense. So the whole, you know, the whole we were warned when we went to the moon thing, I don't know. I don't know about that. And it just says, if that was the case, why would we go again today, right? It's the same situation. So hopefully we get some clarification on that. But we have been seeing things in space apparently since the very, very beginning. And we're talking about going all the way back before Apollo, right? To just give you a brief synopsis here, there was a space race, and I guess currently is still now, where it was us against Russia during the Cold War. Russia was kicking our butt, getting out there into space. They had the first, I think, man in orbit, woman in orbit, dog in orbit, satellite in orbit. And they launched Sputnik in, I think, 1957. They were kicking our butt. We were way behind. We weren't even on the map as far as space exploration goes. Kennedy comes out in 1961 and essentially gives the historic speech to saying we're going to make it to the moon by the end of this decade. Wow. 8 years. 1961, we finally made it to 1969. We were nowhere on the map as far as space exploration goes, and we went from 0 to 60 in 8 years, which I think is astounding if we did it, right? If we did it. So, in the beginning, after he made this speech here, I believe by 1962, we were already launching things into space as far as human beings go. And we had a few different levels of the program. And before we do that, what will Artemis 2 see on the dark side, which is the thumbnail? And that's just the question. I just really want to know, and hopefully they'll tell us. But jumping right into it, the Mercury missions, right? So the Mercury missions, this is just getting human beings out into space. Just seeing if we can go. These were usually turnaround trips, just kind of going and coming right back, you know, going into space and then just really re-entering back into the atmosphere for the most part. Now, back in 1962, so the first year, a year after Kennedy makes a speech, we had astronaut John Glenn, and this isn't going to be mission by mission. These are going to be missions that there had been mentions of anomalous things being seen, right? So we can see what the consistency of something like that is for individuals that travel out into space. So Mercury Atlas 6, astronaut John Glenn, as depicted right here on the screen, observed 3 small glowing yellowish green particles surrounding the capsule. Now, he described these as fireflies. These followed the spacecraft and appeared to move independently. Glenn speculated they might be anomalous, and then obviously NASA later explained them as ice crystals, or they had an explanation for it, basically. I'm going to read. Let me see if I can get through this here. There was a transmission transcripted here. I'll read some of it just so you kind of could see how the conversation went. So it's about an hour and 15 minutes into the orbital flight aboard Friendship 7. Glenn reported, "This is Friendship 7. I'll try to describe what I'm in here. I'm in a big mass of some very small particles that are brilliantly lit up like they're luminescent. I never saw anything like it. They round a little. They're coming by the capsule and they look like little stars, a whole shower of them coming by. They swirl around the capsule and go in front of the window, and they're all brilliantly lit. They probably average maybe 7 or 8 feet apart, but I can see them all down below me also. Capcom responded, Roger, Friendship 7. Can you hear any impact with the capsule? Over. Astronaut Glenn says negative, negative. They're very slow. They're not going away from me more than maybe 3 or 4 miles per hour. They're going at the same speed I am approximately. They're only very slightly under my speed. Over. They do have a different motion, though, from me because they swirl around the capsule and then depart back the way I am looking. Are you receiving? Over. There are literally thousands of them. This is Friendship 7. Am I in contact with anyone? Over. This has been going on about 1 plus 15. Over. Just after I remarked about the sunset, I looked back up, looked out the window, and all the little swirl of particles were going by. Over. This is Friendship 7. This is Friendship 7 broadcasting in the blind again on HF. This is Friendship 7 broadcasting in the blind. Sunrise has come up behind the periscope. It was brilliant in the scope, a brilliant red as it approached the horizon and came up. And just as I looked up out the window, I had literally thousands of small luminous particles swirling around the capsule and going away from me at maybe 3 to 5 miles per hour. Now that I am out in the bright sun, they seem to have disappeared. It was just as the sun was coming up. I could still see just a few of them now, even though the sun is up some 20 degrees above the horizon. Capcom finally responded, but did not address the UFOs that Glenn was reporting, concentrating instead on telemetry. And asking Glenn to take a blood pressure check. Sometimes irregularities in blood pressure can cause firefly spark-looking visual artifacts. 13 minutes after his initial report, Glenn radioed, "We'll give blood pressure check. I still have some of these particles that cannot identify coming around the capsule occasionally." Over. Capcom finally addressed the issue. Roger, how big are these particles? Glenn stated, very small. I would indicate they're in the order of 1/16 of an inch or smaller. They drift by the window, and I can see them against the dark sky. Just at sunrise, there were literally thousands of them. It looked like a myriad of stars. Over. Capcom, Roger, are they moving by you or floating with you? Over. Glenn, some of them almost float with me. Most of them appear to be moving about 3 to 5 miles per hour away from me. I'm just going a little faster than they are. Over. Capcom, Roger. The conversation switched to situation reports a scheduled radio call with President Kennedy. However, when the White House heard that Glenn was, quote, seeing things, the call was canceled. So Glenn continued his report. Toward the end of the report, he said, quote, only really unusual thing so far besides ASCS trouble were the little particles, luminous particles around the capsule, just thousands of them right at sunrise over the Pacific. Over. Capcom, Roger 7, we have all that. Looks like you're in good shape. Remain on fly-by-wire for the moment. About 10 minutes later, Capcom asks, quote, I'm instructed to ask you to correlate the actions of the particles surrounding your spacecraft with the actions of your control jets. Do you read? Over. Glenn states, this is Friendship 7. I do not think they were from my control jets. Negative. Over. About an hour later, Glenn reports, now that the sun is starting, I have all these little particles coming around the capsule again, just at sunrise. Then a few minutes later, this is Friendship 7, all these little particles, there are thousands of them, and they're not coming from the capsule. There's something that's already up there because they're all over the sky. Way out, I can see them as far as I can see in each direction almost. At 2 hours, 46 minutes, Glenn reported, this is Friendship 7. I'm trying to get some pictures of these particles that are outside here. Over. A few minutes later, Capcom reported, Friendship 7, this is Canton. We also have no indication that your landing bag might be deployed. Over. Glenn asked why this comment was made, and evidently Capcom replied that the ground crew was investigating the UFOs. Glenn responded, quote, well, I think they probably thought these particles I saw may have come from that, but these are there are thousands of these things, and they go out for, it looks like miles in each direction from me, and they move here very slowly. I saw them at the same spot on the first orbit. Over. Capcom, Roger. About a half an hour later, Capcom asked, Friendship 7, this is Canary Capcom, how do you feel? Glenn said, this is Friendship 7, I feel fine, no effects whatsoever, none. Capcom. Friendship 7, are you still seeing the particles around your capsule? Glenn says, negative. I don't seem to see them around here on this side. I saw a few, just after I left Canaveral and turned around facing forward. They were coming toward me at the time I was going, so I know that they were not coming from the capsule at all. I saw the particles in huge quantities at each sunrise so far. Over. Finally, about 45 minutes later, Glenn reported, this is Friendship 7, turned around, yawed 180 degrees to see the sunrise here, and also to see these little gadgets here that I don't know what they are. Quote, they do not seem to be coming from the capsule at all. There are too many of them. They are all spread out all over the place. It looks like some of them might be miles away. Wow, right? That's crazy. I mean, that if you remember I think it was the STS shuttle mission where they lost that 13-mile tether, that we've looked at that video on this channel before. It's kind of the same thing. It was a lot of those little particles. They were like pulsating. Some of them were donut shaped. They had a hole in the middle. A lot of people think they're like plasma sort of things. And sounds like that might be what he experienced out there. There's some theories that they have some of these. There may be like some high altitude, life at higher altitudes, like plasma-based life. That's been a theory for a little while now. So, truthfully, just from that conversation, that sounds like kind of what he may have been describing there. But that's in 1962. That's when we first went into space. So the moment we actually even had a chance to get into space, this is what what was encountered, essentially. That's on Mercury Atlas 6. And I think there were a few more before that. So that was the sixth one, February 1962. So, getting into some more of this good stuff here. Mercury Atlas 7, astronaut Scott Carpenter reported similar Firefly particles, describing them as snowy flakes that moved around the capsule. Says he photographed them, and like Glenn's sighting, they are officially attributed to spacecraft condensation or debris. So, once again, I mean, this is, obviously NASA isn't going to confirm that any of these things at any point are anything other than something explainable. I think we know that by now, right? But at the time, they're pretty new to what's going on, and they may be making honest assumptions on what they think it might be at the time. But we know over time that it hasn't checked out to be ice particles and a lot of the things that they say that they are. But so this is astronaut Scott Carpenter. So we move on. We're just in Mercury. These are the Mercury missions. So we got Mercury Atlas 8. Okay, this is astronaut Wally Schirra. Also witnessed these fireflies coming from the phenomena by previous Mercury astronauts. He noted their luminescent quality and independent motion. So same thing, nothing different there. We go to Mercury Atlas 9. Astronaut Gordon Cooper reported a glowing greenish object approaching his capsule at high speed during his final orbit. He described it as a UFO and claimed to have photographed it, but the images were reportedly confiscated. Cooper later testified before the UN about his belief in extraterrestrial visitors, linking this particular sighting to the broader UFO phenomena. Additionally, he mapped over 100 magnetic anomalies from space, some speculated to be non terrestrial in origin, including potential USOs or unidentified submerged objects in the Bermuda Triangle area. He's way ahead of his time on this. He's doing this from orbit, kind of mapping magnetic anomalies down there on the surface of Earth, and kind of pinpointed a strange area, which just happened to be the Bermuda Triangle, where a lot of strange things happen, and a lot of people have disappeared, a lot of electronics have failed. So you guys all know the story on the Bermuda Triangle. So he was definitely on to something with that. Now we get into the Gemini missions. So the Gemini missions, from what I understand, this is a point in time where, we're on the fast track, obviously, to try to get to the moon. And the Gemini missions were designed to practice the docking of these crafts. So they would usually have more than one Gemini mission going on at the same time. So they have multiple craft up there orbiting the Earth, and they would meet up and practice docking while orbiting the planet. So a couple times, there were actually multiple times, I guess, here that we had some issues up there. Gemini 4, starting out with that. This is June of 1965. Astronaut James McDivitt sighted a white cylindrical object with a protruding arm, which he photographed. He described it as satellite-like, but unidentified at the time. Some interpretations suggest it could be an alien craft, though NASA has attributed it to debris like the Titan II booster. McDivitt eventually later clarified as likely man-made, but obviously those are one, you never know. Usually when that happens, you're like, oh, okay, he took time to think about it, and this is what he's concluded that it was. But then there's also likely the conversations that NASA has with you during debrief, and essentially that's where they tell you that you're going to change your story. And, when you go out and speak about it in public, that you're going to say that this was the Titan II booster. This is what you're going to do. You're not going to walk around saying it was anything else, right? And we see a lot of astronauts. There's some that have defected, but most of them follow that path. And so a little bit more about this. The multi-crew Gemini missions produced several notable UFO incidents. In June 1965, astronauts Ed White, the first American to walk in space, and James McDivitt reportedly spotted an unidentified object in a Gemini 4 mission, which is what we just talked about. The white cylindrical shape with the white pole sticking out of one corner, resembling a beer can with a pencil extending from it. And a quote from McDivitt, he just stated, "At the time I saw it, I said there was something out in front of me or outside the spacecraft that I couldn't identify, and I never have been able to identify it, and I don't think anybody ever will." So McDivitt attempted to photograph the object, resulting in images that became known as the tadpoles due to their blurry appearance. NASA never released clear images of what the astronauts had claimed to see. Surprising, right? Not. So getting into Gemini 5, astronauts Gordon Cooper and Pete Conrad reported unusual phenomena. And so let's put this back into perspective. So far, we're only talking about technically 3 years into us launching Americans or humans from the United States into space, like 3 years with these different anomalous incidents, right? And we're not even close to the end yet. We'll be getting close to the end, and we'll kind of make this make sense because, we're about to send more astronauts into deep space. I guess you can consider that deep space, into a lunar orbit, further than than further than low orbit, right? Which is where most of the stuff happens here around Earth. We got astronaut Gordon Cooper and Pete Conrad reported unusual phenomena building on Cooper's Mercury experience. Cooper reiterated his belief in extraterrestrial craft, linking prior sightings to potential alien activity. So nothing major, just saw something weird, kind of reaffirmed some of the things he saw during the Mercury missions. Gemini 7 astronauts Frank Borman and Jen Lovell spotted a bogey separate from their booster along with glowing oval objects and particle swarms. This is one you probably remember. So it is just, I guess he came in over the radio and said, bogey at 10 o'clock high. Capcom said, this is Houston. Say again, 7. Lovell said we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high. Capcom says, Gemini 7, is that the booster or is that an actual sighting? Lovell says, we have several actual sightings. Capcom says, estimated distance or size. Lovell says, we also have the booster in sight, which means we see the booster, but what are those, right? What are those? Obviously, something up there anomalous that they didn't bring up there with them. Now, maybe down the line, they'll try to attribute it to one of the earlier flights, like debris from an earlier flight. But he saw the booster. It wasn't that. So what are those, right? And they're just in orbit. They haven't gone anywhere yet. So you can literally abort and re-enter the Earth's atmosphere quickly from where they are at any time, back to Earth, right? Safe and sound. And yeah, so that's what happened there. Let's get into Gemini 10. This July 1966, astronauts John Young and Michael Collins observed a large cylindrical object with two smaller companions, which they photographed, cited as potentially extraterrestrial but unconfirmed. Right? Moving along, Gemini 11. September 1966, astronauts Charles Conrad and Richard Gordon reported an object flying over their craft, causing equipment interference and battery drain. Transcripts confirm Houston's query about something flying over, with astronauts affirming it was weird. 6 minutes of transcripts were missing, and I actually have a video because Kevin Knuth actually recently on Jesse Michaels' podcast kind of talked about this, and I thought, okay, it's pretty fitting. So let's see what he had to say about this.
Of the Gemini 11 mission, where from the transcripts, the astronauts are working and something flew over their Houston asked that just something just fly over you, and they say affirmative, weird, and then there's something like 6 minutes of no transcript, right? And but when the thing flew over, the object flew over them, it drained their. It drained one of their batteries. Charlie got drained. So stack C got drained. So it's almost a classic UFO sighting. They see an object in space, it flies over their ship, and then drains their batteries. Right. And so that's in the transcript of Gemini 11.
Wow. And that's public. That audio.
Well, and now, so the question I've had is why, when we had the NASA commission, why was there no section on what astronauts have seen in space?
Great question, Kevin Knuth. Why? Why does NASA keep all this type of stuff silent? Right? And this is, and I'll just say this real quick. We all know this. This is the reason why we can't believe anything that they say, right? Because we know they're withholding information. They're not telling us everything that they could tell us, right? If it's something coming from outer space, it's not, whose secret is that to keep? It's not anyone's secret to keep. You should be the warning system. You should be alerting us that these things are out there and that they're coming in and that they're being seen. Like, where do you get off feeling like you are the gatekeeper to, information on what happens out there? It's insane. It's insane. And then the battery drain, right? So we talked about that on, encounters that happen near the ground. They seem to have an effect on electronics or the ability to shut off electronics or manipulate electronics, either purposely or just by the state of their technology, just unwittingly, unknowingly. So that's Gemini 11. Before we even got to Apollo, right? So let's go ahead and keep going here. That was September 66. Now we're into Gemini 12, which is November 1966. So we were putting them up every month, every other month during this phase. And astronauts Jim Lovell and Buzz Aldrin saw 4 linked objects in a row, not stars. Couldn't find too much more information on that. Didn't really elaborate more. But we can now move into the Apollo missions. Apollo 8. This is December 1968. Astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders reported unusual lights and phenomena during the first lunar orbit. So now we made it. Now we mastered the docking, right? That was Gemini. We mastered the ability to dock. We're comfortable. Now we're moving on to the moon. We're orbiting the lunar surface of the moon in preparation to eventually land on the moon. And with it laid out like this, I mean, you can kind of see how, for those who believe that we went, and I go back and forth about this, but you could see that these steps being taken, we were doing this consistently enough, and these are logical steps that you would take, fast tracking yourself to the moon, right? And so we'll talk about that in a bit, but astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders reported unusual lights and phenomena during the first lunar orbit. Some people link this to broader moon anomaly rumors. Once again, these have all been with the stigma, right, that had begun way back in the 40s, 1940s. This is part of the reason why people didn't want to report this type of stuff, or they just made these things look like they were silly to even consider, right? Apollo 10, May 1969. Astronauts Tom Stafford, John Young, Eugene Cernan heard eerie whistling or outer space music on the moon's far side. So this is where you got to start thinking about, okay, the moon's far side, these dudes, from what I understand about this particular case, they were pretty freaked out hearing these sounds. The communication is broken with Earth while they're on the dark side of the moon. However, they're picking up things on their radio. Weird sounds. They sound like, I forgot exactly how they described them, but I know they were saying, hey, this is weird, right? And they alerted Mission Control about that when they came back in contact, when they came back around the moon. But the way that this was explained is it was described as NASA. No, okay. So it was described as unexplained and alien-like, the sounds they were hearing, though NASA attributed it to module interference. NASA always has an answer, right? They always have an answer of, once again, whenever you have someone, especially anyone that's a human, no one knows everything. So to have an answer for everything, You know, the general rule about that is if someone always has an answer for something, you walk the opposite direction, because there's no way that someone should be able to have an answer for everything. There's never a I don't know or we're not sure. How do you have an answer for everything? Right? Troubling. It's troubling. You have to consider that maybe you're wrong about some of that stuff. You know, maybe it wasn't interference. Maybe it was something being broadcast from the dark side of the moon. Simple as that. Right? But I guess we'll find out when Artemis goes back. All right, moving on. You know which one is next. Apollo 11. The first time man stepped on the moon. So let me go ahead and go over this with you, and then we're going to take a look at a couple things here. So obviously, astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins observed a UFO in cislunar space, described by Aldrin as a light or object pacing them. Buzz Aldrin witnessed a light that appeared to move alongside the Apollo 11 spacecraft on the way to the moon. In his later clarification, quoted, he pointed to plausible spacecraft-related sources, such as a separated rocket component or panels that moved away during operations, and explicitly concluded it was not an alien. Right? Now, we've heard different rumors and things that he said over his lifetime about, things that may have been cleverly edited to make it seem like he was saying that he saw aliens. Now, with that being said, if we have things in our own skies that are unidentified and anomalous, that are right here, right above our heads, there's it's almost 100% chance that those same things are happening in outer space near the planet. So when you think about it that way, the things that they're mentioning that they're seeing while they're out there, very plausible that those things were related to the things that we currently see in the sky, right? It only makes sense. It only makes sense when you apply it that way. And here's one thing that, they had the press conference when they came back from the moon. A lot of people feel different ways about the demeanor and how they felt, how they looked. I've been kind of looking into it lately, and I've been changing my position a little bit on how I feel, because I've really been in the middle. There's definitely evidence that makes me feel like, yeah, okay, they did this, and there's sometimes where it makes me feel like, I don't know, look at how they're acting, but just the thing that is strange, and maybe it's because of the moment of it being the first time someone landed on the moon, just the way that the press conference seemed to be scripted, which could just mean they wanted the press conference to go a specific way, like they wanted specific things to be covered during this groundbreaking moment in humanity's history. But this is one of the moments that everybody gets hung up on, and, kind of makes me feel some kind of way. Even though this is not about whether they went or not, it's still, you got to ask yourself, you just have to ask yourself questions in relation to this. So let me bring this up here.
I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may. When you were carrying out that incredible moonwalk, did you find that the surface was equally firm anywhere, or were there harder and softer spots that you could detect? And secondly, when you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars in the solar corona, in spite of the glare?
In rather flat regions, the footprint would penetrate perhaps a half an inch or sometimes only a quarter of an inch, give a very firm response. In other regions near the the edges of these craters, we could find that the foot would sink down maybe 2 feet, possibly 4 inches. And in the slope, of course, the various edges of the footprint might go on up to 6 or 7 inches. Compacting this material would tend to produce a slight sideways motion as it was compacted on the material underneath it. So we feel that you cannot always tell just by looking at the terrain what resistance will be as your foot sinks into a point of firm contact. So one must be quite cautious in moving around in this rough terrain.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see. I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said, about stubbing your toe at the point of landing because the surface was obscured by dust. Do you see any way around that kind of problem for future landings on the moon?
I think the simulations that we have at the present time to enable a pilot to understanding the problems of a lunar landing, that is a simulator and the various lunar landing training facilities and trainers that we have will do that job sufficiently well. Above that, I think it's just a matter of pilot experience.
So yeah, okay, that was the press conference, and I've watched, more than just, I think, where a lot of people get the opinion of the somberness, so we've gone over that. It's the beginning of the press conference. They kind of get a little more loose as the press conference goes on, but the thing that bothered me was just the scriptedness of it, and then the Michael Collins just saying that. He didn't see any stars. That's something that a lot of people get hung up on too. And it doesn't make sense, right? Because he never was on the surface. He was in the capsule. And he's on the dark side, for a portion of that time. And that's a perfect place to see stars because it blocks out the sun. You look around, you see stars. So just weird, just very, very weird. But the whole theory of them going there and seeing something strange on the backside of the moon, or they saw something, they were warned not to come back, and it just doesn't, for me, make a lot of sense. Even though I would be, as I said earlier, it makes a lot of sense if you were going to come from outside of this planet to maybe stage something there, right? And then kind of come back and forth from there. It would make total sense that, that would be something that someone would do, because that would be something we would do, traveling to another planet. We would probably stage on their moon as well, instead of just trying to go directly to the planet's surface. It just makes sense. And I think we would probably approach any planet that was inhabited by life in that same fashion. So I would still be interested to know, what's on the backside of that moon, because we never get to see it. And once again, if there isn't, it could be something that was there a million years ago that isn't there currently, but maybe there's some, just like we have, so if, lunar landers up there and the buggies and the things that we've left behind, that maybe there's some things that were left behind by something very, very ancient. Maybe something that was up there when the Egyptians were, prominent down here on Earth. Maybe they were staging themselves there in some other prehistoric time, some ancient time. And, even if they're not up there now. So still going to be interesting to find out what's up there. If anyone sees anything back there. Now, even if they don't see anything back there, you would have to assume they're going to see something on the way. That's where it kind of gets scary, but we'll talk about that in a minute here. So, getting into Apollo 12, this is just a comparison. This is them happy and gleeful at the bottom here, leading up to the to the mission, or maybe even after the mission. I'm not sure of the date of the black and white photo, but then compared to them, as they opened the press conference, and just seemed like, definitely two different moods and just question marks on why that would be the case, right? Let's see. All right. So, Apollo 12, November 1969. So, they had just come back from the moon and they went again. They had just gone again a few months later. So, astronaut Charles Conrad, Richard Gordon, and Alan Bean captured an anomaly in photos during lunar landing, visible as a reflection or object in helmet visors. Okay. Nothing more to that story that I could actually dig up, but just another case where something was weird when they went up there. We got Apollo 14. Actually, did I include Apollo 14 here? Nope, I didn't. No, yeah, Apollo 14 was just the mission that Edgar Mitchell was on. He didn't see anything during the mission. He saw something later. He saw us at a different time. As a pilot, I think he saw something here on Earth. So we'll skip Apollo 14. But Apollo 17, astronaut Eugene Cernan, last moonwalker, hinted at, quote, somebody else on the moon. Photos show potential anomalies like domes or structures speculated as alien bases by the hacker, the infamous hacker, Gary McKinnon, who had hacked into the government servers and was downloading what he said was proof that we had of extraterrestrial presence, but due to download speeds at the time was like 56K kilobits per second, which is going to take you 5 days to download a picture that way, right? So he had hacked into the system, he found some stuff that depicted some of these anomalies and some of these UFOs. And during his downloading, they found that he was in there and canceled his transmission. So this is something else that I wanted to show before we get into the last part of this. Actually, let me get into this part first. This is a few other anomalies, right? Because we're just talking about the space program as far as leading up to Apollo, right? We know that there were shuttle missions, the STS shuttle missions that happened after that we had, once again, as we talked about, the tether, the 13-mile tether that had broken off and it was floating out into space, and you saw all these little particles, like were mentioned in the Gemini mission, kind of swarming around this tether. And that's why I say history is always a good indicator of things that we're currently dealing with, right? And at the time, they could say, oh, just ice. It was ice breaking off, and this is where the particles are coming from. But then, as time goes on and you see a scenario where it couldn't be ice, but it's being explained in the same fashion, then you're able to kind of validate, what happened on some of those Gemini missions. But there were some other notable things just to kind of bring up. So let me see here. We did the space music. We did the lights. We did that. So there were space snakes. So Story Musgrave reported seeing elongated white snake-like objects outside the shuttle on a shuttle mission, describing them as 6 to 8 feet long and moving with intention. The repetition across separate flights in the account appears consistent. Let's see. The account notes Musgrave hasn't backtracked on his testimony, highlighting the frequent gap between observers' lived certainty and the possibility. The dog bone object. NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy reported seeing an unidentified object drifting near the International Space Station and recorded it in his phone before notifying Mission Control. The sighting was briefly noted as NASA's station status updates and drew media interest at the time. Russian flight controllers later said the object was an antenna cover that had come loose from the Zveda service module during maintenance. Although an initial inventory check caused some confusion, the object's slow tumbling motion matched the expected behavior of small debris moving in orbit. Cosmic ray flashes, lights show in the void. Astronauts across Apollo missions and the ISS have witnessed strange flashes of light appear in the darkness, ones that could be felt even with the eyes closed. Astronauts described them as darting flares with varying brightness of colors. Explanation given is that high-energy cosmic rays strike the retina and visual system, and the brain interprets the light impact as light. All right. Chinese astronaut knocking sounds. China's first astronaut, Yang Lui, reported hearing knocking sounds during the Shenzhou 5, describing them like striking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. He investigated visually and found nothing, and the strangeness was heightened by the expectation that sound should not behave normally in spaceflight context. The account says similar knocking sounds were heard on later missions in 2005 and 2008, suggesting a valid cause rather than any malfunction. All right, and then that was actually it for that. And like I said, obviously the STS shuttle missions, you know, the one we always talk about where you see the little anomalous thing going across the top of the Earth, and then all of a sudden it just darts back by itself, and then you see some projectile come out from the Earth. So many different cases, so many different examples. The ISS cameras being shut off at the weirdest times, right, when something anomalous is shown. Just so many different things, right, that point to activity out there, right? So you have to ask yourself, you know, think about it. If you put yourself in a craft and you're going to the moon and it's 2 to 3, and I don't know how different the travel time is from Apollo, but I know Apollo was 3 days to the moon and I think 3 days back. So I would assume it's probably close to the same, right? So just think about going into space without the Earth right under you, or you could be back to the surface of the Earth in 90 minutes, where it's going to take you a day and a half, you know, maybe 2 days to get back to the Earth, depending on where you're at in the trip, and you run across something that is obviously something that's not made by man, something that you literally already understand. And here's the thing, like, you have so many examples of it now that have been shown on, the people have captured on video. You have the military come out and talk about these things. So these astronauts are going into space with the understanding that there are things out there, right? And so how does that change the perspective of someone traveling there, right? Because I would think the early astronauts, you know, science fiction, you talk about pop culture, they would think, okay, there's got to be something out there, but we don't know something's out there, but there's got to be. Versus, we know something's out there, and it's actually, you know, it's visiting Earth, right? So what would be, if you know that, if you have that information or that knowledge, then you would have to almost assume that it'd be very possible for you to see something the moment you left Earth. And I'm sure there's like chatter between astronauts and their little circles and stuff like that. So I would assume that you're going there with knowledge that you might run into something. And then how do you react to that? What is the reaction when you're out there, you know, 2 days away? You can't do anything immediately about it. And this thing just pulls up beside your craft, right? And kind of just follows you. Like, you can't deviate from your flight plan. You can't really do anything but continue the mission, and to have something trail you or something ride aside you the entire time how does that affect you? Like, what do you do in a moment like that? And then, okay, and then say that doesn't happen. Say they watch you from afar and you're not really even aware that they're monitoring your trip to the moon. How about when you get on the backside of that moon where you can no longer see Earth, so your connection to your home planet is not there visually. Like, you know it's there, but visually it's not there. And transmission wise, you can't transmit anything in that time that you're back there. What does that feel like? Especially knowing that there are things out there, and possibly on that first trip around the dark side of the moon, you may discover something. You're aware that things are in the skies on Earth. You're aware that these things come in from space. You're aware that people talk about things being on the backside of the moon. So that first time you go around, that feeling, what is that going to feel like, right? And then are these astronauts going to be able to come back home and be transparent about what it is that they see or what it is that they saw? Probably not. I don't think NASA would allow them to do that. But I hope somebody would break the ranks. And I'm always that guy that says break the ranks. I just hope somebody would be like, dude, we saw some crazy stuff, okay? They come back to this press conference and just be like, yeah, I don't need to go back. We saw some crazy stuff. They built something up there. There's something up there, right? They can come back and do that. Yeah, I know. Now, would I go? I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go for that very reason. So these are the guys that are going. This is going to be the Artemis mission. These are the guys that are going to go. And they have to be super nervous right now that this is, coming up, that the date is coming up. Once again, these are the astronauts from left to right. Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. They've been selected to go. And the question that we posed here, are we going back to the moon with Artemis 2? Or are we going for the very first time? That I'll leave that for the people to have that debate. I won't have an opinion on that because evidence leads me to make me feel either way sometimes. So are we going back to the moon with Artemis 2? Or are we going for the very first time? And then, as I posed earlier, will these astronauts be forthcoming with the information on anomalies observed either on the way to the moon or on the dark side of the moon? I would love to know. And I don't think they would tell us. But with that being said, I have on the show here, we used to do the Social Dig show. We had a segment that we used to do, and I'm bringing it to this show because I'm like, why not? So we used to do a segment called Science Fiction to Science Facts Movie Edition. So we're going to start doing that on this channel. So the movie, Science Fiction to Science Fact Movie Edition movie for you to go see is Apollo 18. And the reason why we picked this movie is because based on the questions that we just asked and talked about here, this is just a movie that really fits that narrative, right? I would hope that what happens in this movie doesn't happen to these Artemis astronauts. I would wish nothing more for them to come back safely. But Apollo 18 is going to be the Science Fiction Science Fact Movie Edition movie for this episode. And the way that this works is that, there are, but prior to understanding that UFOs are real and that this phenomenon is definitely something that's going on and is here in our skies, you may watch a movie that you once considered science fiction. You look at it like, okay, hey, great movie, science fiction. All right, let me go to sleep. But then once you are aware that the phenomena is real, you go back, you put on these new lenses, and you rewatch some of these films that you realize are potentially science fact at this point. Like some of these things that happen in movies like Apollo 18, these are things that literally are now plausible because you're looking through them in a different lens now. So go ahead and go out and watch this movie if you haven't seen it. Apollo 18, science fiction and science fact movie. And we're going to go ahead and get ready to get up out of here. Thought we'd bring that back because it was definitely a fun part of the show. So we're going to have that. And we're also going to bring back some of the other things. So I'm kind of bringing these shows together as we get ready to get back into some of this other stuff. Yeah, Cosmic Joe says, seen Apollo 18. Scary. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. And yes, I agree, Deadfish Cheese Spread. Spielberg's Disclosure Day is going to be intense. I can agree with that. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring up some information on that. So that was the show. Will Artemis 2 see? What will Artemis 2 see on the dark side? I think it's going to be, crazy. I mean, I would be scared the entire time. That's a fact. I'm not afraid to say that. And then as Deadfish Cheese Spread says, Disclosure Day is going to be intense, and it is coming up here, and we're going to stay on the countdown. We have now 121 days left until Disclosure Day, June 12th, 2026, and we're going to count this down all the way until it's time to go see it. And I can't wait. The moment it comes out, I'm going to see it. Yes, Deadfish, my heart gets pounding when I watch the trailer. You can say that again. And Miss Catherine Jones is watching Apollo 18 right after the show. It is awesome, Miss Catherine. I'm hoping this doesn't happen. I really am. I hope this doesn't happen to the guy, to our astronauts. But you got to open your mind up. You got to open your mind up. You definitely got to open your mind up. Woo Riders DG in the building. Appreciate you coming on in, sir. Hillbilly Herb, too. Moon rocks on the moon. Yeah. Got to take moon rocks to the moon, right? Take moon rocks to the moon, if you know what I mean. Let's see. Who else do we have here? See, Deadfish got up in here. Woo Riders DG, Rob G's. Is it true that you're a Palladian starseed? I don't know, man. I would be lying if I said I knew. And that's the thing, I guess we'll find out if we are connected to anything out there at some point down the line, but I really don't know. I'll settle with being a human being for now because that allows me to relate to everyone else out there. Kai Snyder, appreciate you coming on in. Says just like Jessica Jones, she couldn't talk about her remote viewing of the moon landing. Yeah. I don't know. That's another show for another day. We actually did a show for that. So if you want to get into the moon landing, did we go? Did we not go? There is a show that we've done here on this channel. If you go back a few episodes at the, hop on our archives, you'll find it. And we had a great conversation there as well. So with that being said, we are still, once again, on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Help us get there. Tell a friend. Share the show. If you're here for the first time, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you know next time we go live. We're going to have another fun show, another great show, as we try to talk through this and try to get to truth and transparency, because that's what matters the most. We don't have any time to deal in fiction. We don't have any time to deal into things that are untrue or unprovable, not plausible. We just don't have that time, right? And I think it's a waste of time. I would be wasting your time if that's what we focused on. So our mission here is truth and transparency, making sure that we have conversations that move the needle, move us forward. This is not for entertainment. This is not for, unprovable stories. This is a place where you will come and we will have conversations that are very plausible, logically thought out, and we're going to get to the answers, because you never know, the answers could be closer than you think. And I think we'll end up finding that out then logic is the key. Logic is the key. So with that being said, we also have memberships available. We like to raise the bar here at the Social Dig and the Definitive UFO News Show. You can join anytime, be a member. Click on the link in the description of each and every video that we have here on this channel. Also, I keep telling you the social Discord is out there. People keep telling me this link needs to be updated, so I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. Also, if you have a cell phone, which mostly everybody does, go ahead and add this number to your contact list. It is 856-843-3444, or that is 856-THE-DIGG. If you're outside the United States, dial 001 first, then 856-843-3444, or 001-856-THE-DIGG. Once again, we are doing UFO Con, or CA UFO Con, California. 2026 Contact on the Bay in Burlingame, California. Crown Plaza, March 20th, 21st, and 22nd. We will have some awesome speakers there. Make sure you get your tickets. We'll go back through the speakers again, which is Carl Crusher, Jesse Beltran, Solaris Blue Raven, Paul Heineck, Misha Johnson, Rima LeBeau, Terry Lovelace, Courtney Macarsani, Kathy Porter, Ron Reger, Robert Bob Salas, Michael Schratt, Jeff Silver, Blake Sinclair, Blue Sophia, Day Star. We also have Ryan Wood. We have myself, Mr. Rob G, conducting interviews at the event for all the speakers there. We also have the MCs, Robert Perala and Davey Scott. You get your tickets at caufocon.com, and I hope to see you there. It would be awesome to meet you guys. Also, the radio show, back in the building, the After Hours radio show with Mr. Rob G. I got everything set up, just needs to be executed. This program that I use is not friendly with doing that show. I've been testing it, and it just isn't doing what it's supposed to do. So hopefully we can make some changes on that, but that show is coming soon. I got everything set up. We're ready to go. And outside of that, just appreciate you guys for coming on in. Let me go ahead and bring myself back up here on the main screen. And Artemis 2, what will they find on the dark side? Leave your comments. I totally appreciate that. It also helps YouTube lets YouTube know that you were engaged with the show and the conversation, right? Then someone will leave a comment based on your comment, right? We can kind of continue the conversation in the comment section. Also, please don't forget to hit a thumbs up or thumbs down, depending on how you feel. No pressure, but please do one or the other, because that also lets YouTube know how you feel about the show. Make sure they show it to people out there. Share it with a friend. Also, bring someone to the show next time. It has been a pleasure hanging out with you guys tonight. Once again, all I ask of you is to stay curious, stay fearless, and keep digging, because the answers may be closer than you think. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Take care.